Alright, so I finally got the torque access mount installed here, and it's not that easy to get lined up. You'll have to play around with your jack underneath the engine and get it kind of started. So what I did was, once you get the bracket in place, you want to go ahead and start all the bolts. Let's start with the bottom one, then go, oh yeah, make sure you get this hex on the inside. I accidentally put this part of it on the outside, and then I realized at the very end, so I go back. If you do make that mistake, which you shouldn't by watching this video, but you could loosen this one, that one, loosen the nut down there, take this bolt all the way out, the one right there, all the way out, and then you loosen this from the outside. You could pull it out, and then you could get a pry bar back there, bend it, slip that into place, and you can put the threads of the bolt up there to give yourself enough clearance right underneath the power steering pump reservoir, and then feed it the threads through here, and then you'll have to pry it again to get the back of the threads started in the hole back there, and then you'll have to use the open end of a wrench while using the pry bar to pry against this and tighten it in. And then as it draws in, it'll shorten the distance, so then this will not be as tense, and you could even leave the pry bar go at one point, as long as you can still get your wrench on those hexes. As you can see right now, you can't even get a wrench on there without prying some space, because the threads just, or the hex on this is not big enough for most normal sized wrenches. If you have a really thin one, you might be alright, but this is already pretty thin and it doesn't fit. So what I did was, for the bolt that goes through the center of the rubber, I decided to line that up first, and you want to make sure, I don't know if you guys can see them in this, probably not, but I can show you from underneath. There's two little hooks on the bottom of this that you want to make sure, bottom of this piece, that you want to make sure catch underneath this, so you kind of have to tilt it this way while you line up that bolt hole, which I did first. I then put these bolts in last. How you do it is up to you, but I found that way was easier for me. Okay. Right here. So, perfect there. Okay. So if you can see way up in there, camera closer. See guys, right there you can kind of see right by the shiny tensioner, those two little hooks grabbing underneath there. So you want to make sure that they catch underneath there, or else they're gonna go on the other side of the bracket and then it's not gonna line up properly. So make sure you get those two hooks underneath there. There's a little slot for them if it's lined up perfectly. And then make sure you put this nut on the bottom for the idler pulley. That one I believe is torqued to 30 foot-pounds, so I just snubbed it with a wrench because you really can't get anything else in there. I basically used this 15mm ratcheting wrench. I use a closed end. It went pretty quick. And then I snugged it with a bigger wrench. My favorite. This guy. Pretty much I use this for like the whole job. Snugged it with this end. Goes on this way from underneath. And then likewise, you could use a ratchet on most of these. This is a 15, these are 13s. And then what I did, rest here. For the one down here, it's a 15, and basically just use the regular 3/8 inch ratchet with a shallow socket. Leave. Here's the 13 I used for these guys, and then I don't know where my 15 got to, but it's basically equivalent to a 3/8. And oh, I know where it is. It's on my torque wrench. So basically, I finished it off with this 3/8 torque wrench, and final torqued it to 50 foot-pounds. The one down there with the 15 socket. I also used the same socket on this one and torqued it to 30 foot-pounds. These ones I did 37. I believe on my paper it says 41, but 37 felt good enough to me. I actually torqued that one to 37 first and then increased it to 50. And this one down here, I used this end, it's a 13. And I'll show you guys how this goes on here because it's kind of tricky. There we go. So that's what it looks like with the wrench on there. As you can see, it's a really tight fit, and I remember when I was taking it off, I had to kind of bend these lines out of the way a little bit and slip this pipe over it. It's on there pretty tight. I think on my paper it's supposed to be 70 foot-pounds, but yeah, I'm not gonna try and get that. So I basically tightened it as good as I could with just this until the wrench started bending, and I pretty much said that's as tight as I want it. So that's that. So, oh yeah, and then the center through bolt is on this end. Get out the way. It's a 15. You just put a wrench on there, like this closed end on there to hold that. And then I used the 18mm deep socket on that little ratchet I showed you guys before. And then the torque wrench, torque this 37. You could just let the wrench rest against this and then torque it with this. You don't even have to hold the other side. So I did 37 for that. I don't know the torque for this jumper cable box thing. That I'll show you guys after I get it installed. But basically just get it nice and tight with the 3/8 and you should be good. It's a 15mm nut. Once I find it here, and underneath there is, for this power steering line, it goes under the bracket there at the bottom, and you could just see in the frame, I think, no, never mind, but there's a clip kind of wedged in there, and there's a bolt that goes in. Light's not working for me too well here, but there's this little bolt that goes in from the bottom like this. This one's the original, it's a 10mm, but I know the older ones have an 8mm, and personally I like the 8mm better because the 10 kind of like squished in there and you can't even get a socket on there, and it's really shallow, so I almost didn't get this out. I was able to get it out with a wrench, but so I actually have an 8mm one from one of these I pulled at the junkyard, so I'm going to use that because it's easy to get the socket on there and I don't have to worry about rounding it. If I can find it. I believe it's over here. Yep. So that's what the 8mm one looks like. It's also in pretty good shape, so I'm going to use that. Alright, I'll show you guys in a second. Oh, how I got on this, the easiest way I found is take a long extension. This should be long enough. But I used a little impact here, slip it on there, get an 8mm socket, and you go in. I don't know if that light's gonna be in there, but let's see here. You could just see right here, there's the clip. I believe it goes like that. Fucker. That's sharp. There we go. So you just line that up with the hole. Bolt goes in through there. So just take your nicely fit extension. If you get it just right, the bottom of the impact is going to sit right, almost touching this, and then you'll just clear it right there. Actually, I might use a smaller extension, I don't know yet, but something like this might be good enough just to get you away from this. But yeah, I'm just going to drive it on there, let the impact hit it a couple times, and that's going to be my torque. So there you have it. Show you guys later.